Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Church Leadership Lab, where we get to have conversations that help empower healthy churches. If you've listened to the last 3 or 4 episodes, you have probably heard Casey say that she wants to do the intro. So without further ado, your co-host, Casey, to finish the intro.
How dare you put me on the spot, Scott? Well, fine. I've heard you do it like 65 times. I'm
right?
one of your hosts, Casey, and the other is Scott. Scott, how's it going? How's life in your world?
Life is amazing. I am really grateful today. We often say things that spoil the timeline of when episodes are created. I feel like there's this unspoken podcast rule, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't give away that, like, today, it's actually like it's March right now. It's late March. And but we like to break that rule all the time. And I'm starting to see like little green things grow from the trees. And it's cloudy and rainy today, but like, it's just like that time of year, like everything's kind of coming back to life. And so that is encouraging my heart and my soul today.
Well, I will give you some Oklahoma, like springtime, how we know it's spring. The trees that have the
tornadoes every single day, all day.
All day, every day. Yes, we do. We just have a truckload of wind. Truckload. So I mean, it's like all the sneezing, all the allergies, and the trees that have those little pinwheel things. So everything is covered in that. Yeah. But it's warm. It is warm. And obviously this weekend should not be giving any timeline, but this weekend it was like 70 in Oklahoma. And I saw that like Northeast got pummeled with snow. I'm like, people, like, why? I don't understand it. So it is definitely spring here as our friends in like New York are covered in snow. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. I see that stuff too. And I'm just like, Lord help them. Lord help them. I don't know. I don't know what else to do. But yeah. We have moments like that in the Chicago area too. Yeah. So I get it. But well, hey, great job on the intro, first of all. Okay.
Okay.
I'll take it back from here only because I have some notes in front of me. Spoiler alert. Sometimes I have notes in front of me, by the way, to our podcast audience. But we are excited today to have another conversation with Josh Denhart. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know that we had a previous conversation all about recruiting volunteers. What does that look like? How do you do that? How do you strengthen and retain volunteers? So if you haven't, make sure you listen to that. We will link to that. But we get to have another conversation today where we talk about every church leader's favorite thing in the world, which is navigating change. So we are super excited for that. Now, if you don't know, Josh is the founder of Lead Ministry. He has created a master course and download system really to help ministry leaders. So everything from, like we talked about before, volunteer training, retention, to internship programs, to leading up to community outreach, productivity, managing change, so much more. Now, before launching Lead Ministry, Josh served as a children's pastor for over 10 years and then founded KidMin Science, science-inspired, Christ-focused resources, including the amazing chemistry show, family experience, and day of science outreach events, as well as multiple VBS and parent resources. Josh is a published author, children's magazine columnist, conference speaker, and local TV personality, and we're so glad to have you back on the show. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, thank you so much. It's kind of funny. All of a sudden, I'm like, local TV personality. How fun is that? That was a fun time in my life, right? Just the weird things that life brings you.
Oh, yeah. I love those things, though. I love like the bullet on the resume or on the LinkedIn profile or whatever. And we all have journeys and stories, and I think they're really fascinating. Yeah. Now, last time we were on the show, we talked all about volunteers, recruiting, retaining, all of that. Today, we're talking about what does it look like to navigate change in your ministry? Now, I know you've spent a lot of time in ministry yourself. Yeah. So I thought it would be interesting to start just asking, what's one of the kind of biggest / hardest changes that you made in your time in ministry?
Yeah, well, as it relates to change, though I have written and published 3 different science vacation Bible schools, my biggest change was actually canceling the massive VBS at the church that I worked. That was one of the first and biggest moves that I ever made. And you might be like, time out. You mean you actually canceled VBS? And the answer is, I actually did. Yes.
Okay. Can you help us understand why? Like what led to that? Yeah, that would be really interesting.
It's a very interesting case study. And I'll say this, that we're a very large church, and we were spending 25. Now, I came in, I was attending the church, but I came in and they hired me as the children's pastor. That's fine. And then as I began to kind of like examine things, we were spending 25% of our annual budget on 5 half days of programming. Okay, so there's a financial piece. Maybe we could consider that. In addition, there wasn't a plan for capital like growth. Like all of a sudden at the end of this 25% of the budget, we didn't have a flat screen TV in 2 rooms. And then in 2 years, we'd have 6 flat screen TVs. It was all like build and flush. You know what I mean? Yep. It was massive spend, and we didn't have anything left over. Okay, that's a piece to the financial thing. Also, it was a massive army of people that were needed, which just sounds normal, but it was so exhausting and taxing for those people that nobody was willing to serve the 52 weeks a year for our standard operating like mainstay discipleship experience. And so we had a financial problem. We also had a human resource problem. I'm telling you, I'm a data guy. So I combed through the archives of our church, and 0.5% of people who came to attend our church, their kids during VBS, ever found their way back and attended more than 4 times.
Okay.
Wow.
So there's a whole bunch of data that I armed myself with, in a sense, to go, now, time out. Has anybody asked the question? And nobody had asked the question. So that was like, and by the way, I don't want to take up all the time on all of the minutia as to why that change needed to take place. But there was a lot of it. The main problem, though, is that it was wearying out. It was crushing the morale of our people. Okay, as an example, we were spending $6.25 per kid per day for VBS, and we were spending about 23 cents per kid per day for Sunday school. Now, again, maybe it's comparing apples and oranges, but we were losing on the mainstay discipleship thing, and we were thinking that we were winning with this outreach, which truly the numbers did not bear that out.
Yeah.
Wow. John, I feel like, I don't know how long ago that experience was, but for you to know those numbers, like that experience clearly like seared some things into your brain, which I'm hoping can kind of like answer where I want to take us next about change.
Yes.
I'm right back in business grad school studying change management and like how long of a process that can be. But thinking of that in ministry, change is inevitable, right? Whether it's ministry, business, corporate, nonprofit, families, like life, like just change is going to happen. And sometimes that's really necessary to grow. But sometimes how we manage that change, or not how maybe sometimes our leaders or volunteers or whatever, that can be the detrimental part.
Well, if you're in ministry, then you know church operations can be a huge challenge. There's a lot to do, little time to do it. And whether it's just you or you have a team, my guess is you have a full plate. So how do you do things like communication and engagement, stewarding your finances, managing your digital presence, fostering community, and so much more in a way that builds a healthy church? Well, answering that question was the goal of creating the Guide to Healthy Church Operations. We wanted to take our 40 plus years of experience serving the church, combined with wisdom from various experts, to provide a blueprint for how you can navigate the ever-changing world of church operations. In this guide, you'll find things like how to improve member engagement and participation, building into staff and volunteers, making better decisions with clear metrics, the essentials of financial stewardship for churches, and so much more. And of course, we wanted to give this to you for free. So there's a link in the show notes to download the Guide to Healthy Church Operations. And we would love for you to grab a copy and use it to help grow a healthy church.
So what are some of the foundational elements of managing change that we should really think of in the church space specifically?
Yeah, there's a lot to this, but I would say that I'll start with this. There is a threshold for change. Now, you people freak out. Like, we're talking about sheep. We have to remember that we are shepherds of sheep, and sheep get spooked really easily. Mm-hmm. And so the larger the church, the larger the arc of change needs to be. Listen, if you're a church of 125 people, you might be able to operate a little bit more like a speedboat. But if you're a church of 1,250, not 125, if you're 1,250, you're more like a large aircraft carrier. So here's a quick fact. It takes 5 miles of open water to do a 180 if you're an aircraft carrier. So it is a massive operation to bring about change. And so I'm just going to touch on these, and then you guys can kind of speak back to it. So I have 5 questions that I ask, and it's a really large document, but these are the high points. Have we done an evaluation? Like, have we done an evaluation? I'm not changing anything until I've walked through some of these questions. Have we done an evaluation? How long has this been in existence? What are the success rates? What are the stories? Who's going to lose something? What's going on here? Also, second one, do we have unity at all levels? I start with the elder board. Does the elder board behind this, if I have the backing of the big dogs at the church, I'm fine. So elder board, senior pastor, senior staff, and my staff. Then I'm going to go, watch carefully now, I'm actually going to go to really important people. I'm sure I'll mention this later, but I do not count opinions. I weigh them. Certain people's opinions weigh more. They have a higher weighted value. Yeah. Maybe because of their intelligence, maybe because of their godliness, maybe because of their time and investment at the church. So everybody's opinion doesn't matter at the same level to me.
Right.
So do we have unity with some of these key players? Also, is it the right timing? Another great question, a lot to say there. Have we considered all areas of communication? I'm going to touch on this just for a second. Do we have this is one of 40 things, and I'm not joking about that, but here's a really important one. Do you have talking points that are completely dialed in? This is kind of like an FAQ thing, so to speak, but do you have talking points that my key volunteer is armed with, so that when somebody else is ticked and they don't have the courage to come talk to me, that this person has been armed with the talking points to de-escalate and stop that person from falling off of the edge of the boat. Yeah. Okay. One last one, and then I'll turn it to you guys to ask some questions. Are we completely organized? If you're not organized prior to a change, you, my friend, are in danger of losing your job. Yeah. Now, that sounds like an exaggeration. It is not an exaggeration. Are you completely organized, and are you literally ready to march forward with this change? Okay, that was a lot to say there. I'm sorry that I took the mic for a while, but any thoughts that you folks have?
Well, I think we both laughed.
I mean, I think that
you said organizations. We've definitely been organized. Are you kidding? PTSD immediately.
Yeah. I think, even in the story you shared as we kind of opened, just your example of what an evaluation can look like, because I think asking those questions and truly evaluating, not just, hey, do we like this or not? Right. So VBS. Yeah. Do we like doing VBS or not? Is that something we want to do or not? But really asking the question, who does this impact? Who would this impact, especially if we stopped or if we continued? Yes. Sometimes you only ask what happens if we do the change, but what happens if we don't do the change? And so I think diving into that and really, really picking that apart. Again, it's not just financial, but God's resources are something to be stewarded well. And you only have so much. And so I think that really stuck out to me as an important part, because sometimes too, I feel like the difficulty in change, yes, it's hard to navigate, but sometimes it's hard to just make the decision. And that evaluation piece, I think, can be so helpful in actually landing on, okay, this is the direction we need to go. And then obviously there's a lot after, but that piece really stuck out to me.
Casey, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm really guilty about time. You said it seems so obvious and it's almost embarrassing to say it, but is this the right time? It's very easy for me to say this is needed. If we, to Scott's point, if we either kept doing it, X, Y, Z would happen. If we stopped doing it, X, like I can see all of that. That's like the big picture, see the forest through the trees situation. But sometimes it's hard for me to say, but is this the right time? Because it might be the right time for me, because I can see the path. I know how to do it. I can organize a plan. Let's go, go, go. But it's difficult for me personally to say, but is this the right time for our team, for our organization, for my family, whatever that is? I think that's a discipline thing that I struggle with, perhaps.
I completely agree. No, I'm doing ministry coaching with somebody out in Oregon. And if I can just elaborate on everything that you just said, Casey. So she has been planning and thinking about a new curriculum, and it's going to be a big, big, big change. And she's super psyched about it. She has a lot of her ducks in a row. But then it was sprung on her that they're going to now go to 4 services, not just 3. And that is a massive change. She was actually out of the country, came back into the country, and 2 key volunteers who carry a very high weighted value. Those 2 volunteers like accosted her in the hall and said, "What does this mean for us?" And she was like, "Oh, no, I just got back. I'm sorry. Nobody told me about this." Okay, that's fail on like a cosmic level. You know what I mean? Like, really? You didn't tell a key staff? We'll go. That's another podcast. But the interesting thing is that I told her it is not, you can take my advice, and I'm telling you with all of the strength that I can, that you changing your curriculum as this 4 service thing is changing, not the right timing. You're going to be fighting 2 battles. It's way too much change. And she was super disappointed because she said, I'm fired up to change this. And I said, I bet you could change it next year.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah. That's really tough. But you also mentioned something, Josh, that I would like to go back to about the weight of opinions and choices and who gets the votes and the weight of those votes. But you also talked about leadership. I do believe personally that culture changes have to come from the top down. We really have to understand the buy-in and the vision of where the leaders that we've trusted, the leaders that God have put in place over us, where they're taking us. So can you kind of talk about how church leaders can increase the buy-in of that leadership level?
Yes. Yes. And I'll start by saying this. Humility, with all humility. I don't know the key to success, but I know for sure the key to failure is trying to please everyone. That is never going to happen. So if you find yourself in the leadership seat, you have to know that that people are going to be upset with you. Yeah. Leaders must lead. So in terms of talking about this idea of getting buy-in, ain't everybody going to be bought in? That's first. Second, I said this earlier, I weigh opinions. I don't count them. Yep. I don't care if 30 people are upset by this. If these 5 people totally get in or totally behind it, I think we have something going on here. I'll never forget. I went to the senior pastor and I said, "Here's my plan." I had all kinds of research way laid out for him. And then I said, "And by the way, Susan," won't say that, "and Lynn, and this dad, and these 2 moms." And he was like, "Now that is interesting. They're all for this." I said, "They're rabidly for this." And he sat back and he goes, "You have 5. Get 50. And I was like, done. I ended up getting 74 people that I personally met with and shared a compelling vision. And by the way. I gave them talking points, and I continued to circle back. Sometimes, Casey, I would find that my language was influenced, and I changed the way that I was crafting my vision for change after I talked to those 4 people. Yeah. I then updated the document, circled back around, and gave it to the previous 12 people so that they would be armed. Because people are not going to come to me. They're going to come to the person they know and care about, and they're going to try to say, I think this is terrible. I think we should oust this guy. And then this person says, you know what? Actually, that's cooler heads shall prevail. Yeah. I'm behind what he says. Yeah. So as when it came to moving away from VBS, I literally personally interviewed scores and scores of people. I took what they said. I looked at their body language as much as I listened to what their words were. Yeah. I modified my approach. Here's an important thing. Sometimes I would share things in my vision approach that got deleted and were never said again because it landed so bad and such a lead balloon. Then there were other things that got repeated because I was like, that gained traction. So, I think that this is a critical thing. Disgruntled people, again, they aren't going to come to me. I want to make sure that I have talking points for all of my good people. Yeah. I'll say this one last thing. It is a terrible thing when you think you are leading and you look over your shoulder and you're all alone and nobody is following. Right. That is called taking a walk. You're not leading, you're taking a walk. Yeah. And so you have to look back behind you on the regular. Right. Who's with me here? Yeah. That's critical.
Yeah. And I think that the understanding that not everybody's opinion weighs the same. Just that alone is probably some good takeaways for church leaders today, because you hear a lot of them, right? If you do anything that involves people, you're going to hear opinions about it. But I think that's helpful.
Scott, that doesn't mean that I'm cold. Right. That doesn't mean that I'm a jerk. It doesn't mean that I don't care about the body. Right. I'm thinking this is chess. Yep. Yeah. Okay. And I care about people and I want them to come along for the ride, but I'm thinking about the long-term future. Yep. And not everybody's opinion is going to weigh the same.
Yeah. 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 Now, I'm curious about this because change is hard, right? It's not just something we do and happens without any difficulty, or like even meeting with 30, 40, 50 people like that is just one part, and that's difficult. So because change is hard, it can often cost something. Whether we have an account build up with volunteers that we're going to kind of cash a check from, or whatever it is, like the relational equity that we have, it can cost something to make changes. How can a pastor or church leader discern if the change that they want to make, knowing the cost, is actually worth it?
Okay. I got a lot of things to say here. I'm going to start with this. Only the wisest and stupidest people never change. That's first. Only the wisest and stupidest people never change. I'll elaborate. Churches, by the way, this would be a quotable moment for somebody out there. So rewind this and listen carefully. Churches die for one of two reasons. Either they change that which should never change, the gospel message, or they are unwilling to change that which they're free to change, the methods by which we share the unchanging message of Christ. So in other words, a church dies because they're changing the gospel message. Woe to you. Yep. Or you're dying because you're really adhered to the year 1985. To simplify it, we date the method, we marry the mission. Yeah. Know what things are forevers and what things are modifiable. When it comes to change, I think that the pain to stay has to be larger than the pain to move forward. As it came to this VBS thing, listen, it was going to be too painful and unsustainable for us to have a lethargic, anemic Sunday school. Yeah. Right. That's bad news. And so I could not envision, like, to stay where we were. I couldn't put my hand to it. We had to make a change. And so therefore, we had to excise something, and it was extremely painful. And a lot of people cried. Why? Because they had put a whole bunch of heart into this. By the way, I had to learn, stick with me, I had to learn empathy.
Yeah.
This was something during that change movement that I had to learn. No, people saw God move. Stand with them in that.
Yeah.
This wasn't a bad thing. It was a beautiful thing for that season. And now we're going to celebrate that. We're going to memorialize it. I'm going to tell you that you did a great job. In this 1 year that we had 7 families come, the 7 families came to be a part of our church, which is very atypical. That was your year.
Yeah.
You led VBS that year. Your prayers were answered. I'm going to stand with you in that. But the ship has to be righted, and I have to have a forward vision moment, and come the pain what may.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important for people to hear too. The vision to change, the ability to press forward, the decision to say, hey, we're no longer going to do this thing, and this thing that you love is going away. Though that is not in opposition to empathy, to gentleness, to kindness, and really to shepherding people with the heart of Jesus along with that change. And I think that's important for people to understand that those are not opposed to each other.
And Scott, I have to say, my youthful zeal was so hard set and such a hard charger to make this change because I saw the greater good that I hurt a few relationships, but I course corrected.
Sure.
And I said, in the middle of it all, I said, hey, you know what? You need to be empathetic and love people through this. And so what you said is very noteworthy.
Now, I'd love if you could do this, because here's the deal. I know that there's people listening to this right now who are in the midst of this process. They're starting out, they're evaluating, maybe they're in the middle of the change. Maybe they're hearing from people about, hey, what in the world are we doing? Why are we doing, can you just encourage some of our leaders listening? Because I think that sometimes you can get kind of your head above or below the clouds and not really see that, hey, there's probably a good reason for this, or there's, some of this is normal. So yeah, I'd love if you could just, as we are kind of wrapping up here, if you could encourage any leaders listening to this who are navigating change right now and find themselves struggling.
Well, in order to empathize with some of those leaders, I led a lot of change at our church, and I did a lot of change. And studies show that 90% of people dislike change, and the other 10% absolutely hate it. Okay? So if you're getting pushback as you're going through change, you're experiencing a good case of the normals. That doesn't mean that you're a bad leader. It doesn't mean that you're leading in a wrong way. It doesn't mean that you're like taking the ship off of a cliff to doom. No, nobody likes change. And so just get used to it.
Yeah.
The next thing I think is extremely important is that there are sometimes, not all the time, there are different types of change. And some changes can be made incrementally. And you can make a small change, and you can let everybody get chill a little bit. You could acclimate, and then you do another change. Great. But sometimes, however, you can't do a 20-foot chasm jump. You can't jump a 20-foot chasm in 2-foot increments.
Right.
There are times that you have to be the big boy, be the big girl, and actually make the change. Some change can be happening incrementally, but not always.
Yeah.
So that's another piece of encouragement that I would give. And I would say, again, as we said earlier, there is a threshold to change. In my evaluation process, when was the last time we did a big change? Another quick thing, leader who is out there. Your ability to effectively carry out future change is predicated on how well you did that last change. If you blow that last change, you've blown future changes.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say one more thing. I call this the stump in the field, because there are times where I I saw the stump and I'm like, man, we could get I live in Iowa. It's a farming community. We live in farming state, whatever. And when a huge 200-year oak tree stump is in the field, you're missing out on crops. Like, you can't drive over the top of that and put crops. You have an amount of ground that isn't being harvestable. But you have to ask the question, what's the cost to taking out that stump?
Yeah. Right.
If I take out that stump, now there's going to be literally, you have no idea where the root system goes. And there's going to be a sink. It is going to be a big, big, big deal. It's going to be an upheaval. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about getting that ground tillable and ready to receive seed. It's about how disruptive is this going to be? So there are times, you may be like, wow, what a change age. He's our change poster child. Guess what? There were times where I literally worked around the stump for 8 years because that was the wisest move.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so good. And that, I think, is, both encouragement and wisdom for people to help kind of navigate the change that's in front of them, that they're in the midst of. And so, I so appreciate that. Well, we do have our kind of closing section, our final five. Now, you're on the podcast previously, so we can't just ask the same questions. I feel like that would just be doing our listeners a little disservice. So some are similar, some are a little bit different. The first one, I think instead of what's one book you'd recommend, just what was kind of the last book that you read or listened to that you want to share with people?
Okay, so this is I do a lot of traveling, so I listen to a lot of books. The last one that I listened to was called Surprise, Kill, Vanish: The Secret History of the CIA and Black Ops.
Amazing.
So that was kind of fun. I have to say, though, I have been obsessed. Like, I don't know about you guys. Casey, you probably did the right thing and I did not. When I was in high school, I didn't read any of the classics. You know what I mean? I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So now I'm going back and read them. So I've been on a big John Steinbeck kick. Okay, that's that one.
Nice.
That's perfect. That was a long title, by the way. It's a really long title. But number two, maybe if you're traveling as well, what is the last movie that you watched?
Yes, The Hateful Eight by Quentin Tarantino. Exceptional movie, mind you.
Yes. Exceptional director, too.
Yes.
Big Tarantino fan.
All right. Number three, what is, you can say either favorite piece of technology or favorite kind of software platform.
Yeah. So I run a platform called Ecamm Live. It allows me to produce at home, super high quality professional presentations, whether it's through Zoom, whether it's through webinars. And so I would say Ecamm Live.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Perfect. All right. Similar. You just can't say the same as the last episode. We will go back and check, but a piece of wisdom, a quote, just a nugget that has stuck with you throughout the years you'd like to share to our audience.
Yeah. And I would say this one deals with change, since we're talking about change. The art of progress is to preserve order among chaos and to preserve change among order.
Not easy.
Not easy. But that's good. That's true. All right. Last one. One thing that you'd like to communicate to our audience listening right now, church leaders.
I would say change is healthy, but it hurts. Let's not sugarcoat the idea. Change is painful. Change is healthy. I would say there's a tried and true method to bring about productive change, and there is a haphazard way to bring about change that quite possibly could cause you to lose your job.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. Well, Josh, could you just give our audience an idea of where they can go to connect with you, to learn more? I know that you have more resources that they can dive into. Just point people in the right direction so they can take those next steps.
Yeah, the easiest place and space would be leadministry.com. Leadministry.com. And courses and podcasts. So leadministry.com would be the easiest place and space.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to that, and we would encourage those of you listening or watching to check that out and to learn from Josh, who has experienced a lot in ministry, has led some change, I'm sure that it's gone amazing, and some that has not, that he's learned those lessons and I know wants to share and help you. And so we would encourage you to go check that out. And we're so thankful for your time today listening and watching. We hope that it's been fruitful. We hope that you have been built up, maybe encouraged, especially those of you in the midst midst of change, to know you're not alone, and some of the things you're experiencing are normal and they are to be fought through. And so we hope this has been helpful. If it has, we'd encourage you to share the conversation, whether you send somebody a link, whether you leave a review, hit subscribe, whatever it is. We would love to help more church leaders and in turn help empower more healthy churches. So we would encourage you to share this. We're grateful for your time today, and we will see you next time.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.